Up until recently, with the exception of Perry Miller in the 1930s, there was this pervading thought among scholars that all Puritans were these group of theocratic patriarchs that dealt with dissent among them very harshly and sometimes violently. David Hall and the group of historians he gathers together want to dispel this notion. Louise A. Breen, in her book Transgressing Bounds, wants to counter the idea that there's this monolithic Puritanism. Patrick Collinson, in his book A Comment Concerning the Name Puritan, says diversity and difference were endemic aspects of what had once been regarded as a relatively coherent phenomenon. So Louis A. Breen goes on to dissect early Puritanism into two main groups. The first group is defined by diversity, tolerance, drawn to the ethos of antinomianism, and put importance on individual judgment. The second group were proponents of the orthodoxy, in her words. They were more narrow and localistic, wanted church and state to have a very close intertwining relationship, and they were led by Thomas Shepard and John Winthrop. Now, in her book, Janice Knight, Orthodoxies in Massachusetts, she agrees that Puritans were set into basically two separate groups, but her group differs a little bit. Her group is more focused on theology, where Breen was more focused on civil society. So in Knight's group, there's the Cambridge Brethren. They were defined by God's capacity to love and works of the Holy Spirit. It was a very passive view of human activism. These were led by Anne Hutchinson, Henry Vane, and it was a very view of an egalitarian society. On the other side of the coin, we have the preparationists. They viewed that there had to be some form of voluntarism or human activism in the working of the Spirit in order for grace to come in. This is a more hierarchical society. So then we have Michael P. Winship in his book, Making Heretics. He believed that the Puritans were a very multi-vocal group and that there was no single controversy, that controversies differed from time to time and from individual to individual. He showed this through what he saw as the antinomian controversy, and he wanted to reframe it. He believed that the real controversy was about the workings of the Spirit and should therefore be called the free grace controversy. He further goes on to show how differences in Puritan society were even among the ministers and among the magistrates. And he shows this by posing ideas in four separate people. So we have John Winthrop and Thomas Dudley in the magistrate area. And Winthrop kind of was a mediator between Anne Hutchinson and John Cotton, and didn't want to see Cotton harmed by the antinomian controversy, whereas Dudley just wanted to see Anne Hutchinson banished and disgraced in no regard to John Cotton. And then on the minister side, we see John Cotton, who was friends of the people who were witnesses of the Spirit, whereas Thomas Shepard viewed this almost as a heresy and very hostile to them. And then we have Sergeant Bush. He edited the letters of John Cotton, and his book's called The Correspondence of John Cotton. It was 125 letters. Hall says that this was the best single work of editorial scholarship in early New England. In this, we see the struggle in the individual. John Cotton often struggles with his salvation at some point, saying that he feels a deadness within himself, and also the ideas of conformity and nonconformity, and how his views changed in civil society, they changed from when he lived in England to when he came to the New World, and how he had to write letters and show why this view had changed. So the goal of all this is to show that there really was no orthodoxy in early Puritan America, and that the term orthodoxy really has to change. It's really defined by the social contract in which you say it. And David Hall would agree and say that all historians have to start using orthodoxy in a much more thoughtful way.